The world got swallowed by a massive game, and half the population walked right in. Only the first person to reach the top of the spender leaderboard could bring someone back to reality. Fail a level 3 times, and monsters tear you apart into code. Nolan dropped $1 billion and took the #1 spot. Between me and his childhood friend Bianca, he didn't even hesitate. He picked her. When Nolan saw me, his voice went ice cold. I already dumped everything I have into this. Wait till I recharge again. I'll bring you back. I smiled. Didn't buy it for a second. He'd never cared about me. Still didn't realize I was the one who built this game. They had no clue staying on top meant constant recharges. Slip once, and you get dragged back in. And every dollar he spent? Straight into my account. When Nolan got pulled back again, he sneered at me. Damn it. Still stuck with you. Bianca's coming to save me. You're pathetic. Without me, just stand here and wait to die. I wondered if that childhood friend of his would ditch her rich sugar daddy and burn everything just to save him. When Nolan Clooney hit #1 on the spender leaderboard, everyone thought he'd save his wife. He walked right past me and pointed at his childhood friend, Bianca Horan. In a flash, she was out, back in the real world. They held each other tight. And me? I felt like a stranger, watching someone else's happy ending. If the guy who dropped $1 billion to save the girl he loved hadn't been my husband on paper, I might have been moved too. Nolan noticed I was still standing there. A wall of light split us. Reality on one side. The game on the other. Behind me, people dropped to their knees crying. I was the only one calm. Nolan frowned. I already put all my money into this. I can only save one person at a time. Serena, be reasonable. Bianca's family goes way back with mine. She got dragged in because she came to see me. No matter how you spin it, I'm saving her first. You're my wife. You should back me up. I let out a short, bitter laugh. 10 years with Nolan. I gave him everything, ran myself into the ground. Even after heart surgery, I was still up all night clearing his levels and handling the company. And I couldn't even get one honest word. The rules were simple. Only the #1 spender could pull someone out. Everyone else had to grind through brutal physical levels alone. And me? Like this, I was just waiting to die. I clenched my fists and forced a smile. Fine. I'll show you who really runs this game. I sneered at Nolan. Are you really doing this for those reasons? Or just for yourself? You know the answer. We both do. The second you leave, I'll die in here. The room shifted. Eyes turned sharp, cold, judging. No one wanted a cheating jerk and his side piece walking out alive, stealing someone else's shot. Nolan went quiet. Bianca caught the vibe and stiffened. She rushed over, clutching his arm, her eyes watering. Nolan, Serena, please don't fight because of me. I know Nolan saved me out of gratitude. He cares about loyalty. When his parents died, my parents took him in like family. That's why he chose me. Serena, don't get the wrong idea. Nolan looked at her even softer. In a few words, Bianca turned herself into the fragile, understanding angel, and Nolan into some loyal hero stuck choosing old debts over his wife. And me? The jealous, unreasonable idiot. People started pointing. He's just paying back a debt. That's not wrong. The people who raised you come first. Yeah, and that girl seems so sweet. She didn't mean to take the wife's place. Standing next to someone that considerate, the wife's being way too aggressive. Every word hit like a punch. In that moment, I was trash on the ground. Anyone could step on me. Nolan's voice was flat. Serena, I'll come back and save you. I smiled. No way he'd drop another $1 billion on me. Half a month ago, when he found out my treatment cost $100,000, he'd shrugged it off. Let's skip it. Heart surgery's risky. You've got a few more years without it. If it goes wrong, the money's gone too. I knew what mattered to him, his money. And now he could burn $1 billion on Bianca. My heart went cold. Bianca stepped closer. The smug, mocking look in her eyes didn't even try to hide. Serena, do your best in the levels. You don't have money to save yourself, so you'll have to grind to survive. Nolan and I will watch from home and cheer you on. I let out a cold laugh, glanced at the tattoo on her arm, then at Nolan. If you were the one trapped in there, you really think Bianca would lose everything to save you? Nolan snorted, grabbing her hand. I trust Bianca. She'd spend everything on me. Stop trying to come between us. I smiled, sharp and mocking. Then that tattoo on her arm. Did you tell her to get it? Nolan froze. Bianca instantly covered her arm, panic flashing across her face. Nolan's gaze went cold. Bianca, let me see. Tears streamed down as she slowly revealed the tattoo. And see, Nolan, I've liked you since we were kids, but I never had the guts to tell you. So I secretly got your initials tattooed. I thought, at least this way, it'd be like I had you once. By the end, she was a sobbing mess. Nolan pulled her into his arms. His voice softened. Don't worry. I'm not leaving you. You love me this much. How could I let you wait all these years for nothing? Bianca sniffed. What about Serena? Nolan looked at me ice cold. Serena, I'll find a way to save you, but it'll take time. Once my company's cash flow settles, just stay alive in the game as long as you can. If you die before I get the money, then it's fate. And I hope you can give Bianca and me your blessing. I almost laughed. I said nothing. The tattoo on Bianca's arm wasn't Nolan's. It belonged to her sugar daddy, Nolan's uncle, Nathan Clooney. But if Nolan wanted to believe her, fine. Not my problem. After Nolan left, I stayed. Everyone thought I was dead either way. I slipped into a blind spot in the cameras. There was a door. I went through it, and suddenly, I could see everything. The game. The real world. All of it. The $1 billion Nolan spent? Already sitting in my account. Seriously? My own husband didn't even recognize the game I'd spent 10 years building. He'd said it over and over. You don't get games. Stop messing with projects. I'm not putting a cent into you. Quit wasting time and stay home. Learn how to cook. The day before launch, all the data got wiped. Nolan wouldn't even check the cameras. He shut my team down on the spot and erased everything I'd built. I never thought my game would come back like this. I watched my balance climb and smiled. Nolan had no clue every dollar spent in here landed in my account. And now, I could walk out anytime. I knew every level, every move. The next day, the spender leaderboard reset, and everyone showed up again. Most of them looked wrecked, bleeding, drained, barely standing. I blended into the crowd. Across from me, Bianca locked onto me, eyes wide. You're not eliminated? I let out a short laugh. What, you that eager to see me dead? Bianca choked, eyes going glossy as she looked at Nolan. Nolan, I was just surprised. I didn't think Serena would twist it again. He rubbed her head, his expression softening. Then he turned to me, ice cold. Serena, our marriage was arranged. I drew your name. I've tried to be a decent husband, but the only person I love is Bianca. You split us up once. This time let us be. The nerve. All I felt was disgust, and like I didn't even know him. Yeah, ours was arranged. But I really loved him. That's why I swapped every name in the drawing for mine. Because I loved him, when his parents died and he had no power in the inheritance fight, I begged my parents to help him. When Nathan tried to get him killed, and he almost died at sea, I was the one who saved him. All I had was a distress signal, but I still refused to eat or drink on that ship. I pushed it until the crew had no choice but to keep searching. That's how they found Nolan, stranded on a deserted island. He was barely alive, completely dehydrated. I cut my wrist and fed him my blood. Half conscious, he opened his eyes. Saw my swollen red eyes. The blood on my wrist. For the first time, he looked at me gently. His voice was rough. Silly girl. Saving me like that. You don't care about yourself? I held him and sobbed, barely able to breathe. Nolan, don't leave me. Please don't let anything happen to you. He hooked his pinky with mine and smiled. Relax. I'm not going anywhere. But later, when Bianca needed blood after a car crash, Nolan dragged me to the hospital in the rain. Even though I had a fever, just to bleed me for her. They'd already taken 200 milliliters. The nurse saw how pale I was and hesitated. Nolan shoved her aside and kept it going. Serena, you saved me with your blood once. You can save Bianca too. Just this once. I won't divorce you. After that, I was basically her blood bank. The life or death moment that once tied us together turned into my nightmare. I kept my voice steady, ice cold on Nolan. Fine. Be together. Whether the game let you, that was different. Almost no one knew the hidden rule. The top spender had to keep recharging. The second they stopped, the game would drag them back in. Bianca put on that worried look. Serena, don't blame Nolan. He was going to spend $100 million to boost your rank. But after I got trapped, I kept having nightmares. I got depressed. So he used that money to build me a private amusement park. Serena, he probably doesn't have a single dollar left for the game. Nolan kissed her forehead. It's fine. My call. Your happiness comes first. He glanced at my wrist, saw the scar. A flicker of guilt. Serena, I'm out of money. Company accounts, cards, 20 grand total. I can't save you. Bianca says she knows how to clear the level. Maybe it'll keep you alive a few more days. I laughed under my breath. Bianca's happiness over my life. An amusement park over my survival. I clenched my fists and swallowed it. Minimum recharge was 10 grand. Give it 2 days, Nolan would get dragged back in. Bianca leaned in, lowering her voice. Today's level is the beam crossing. They say there are crocodiles, but it's fake. Just jump in and swim across. It's a courage test. We worked forever to find this. I knew the real play. There were real crocodiles. You tap the beam twice short, once long, then walk straight across. She wanted me dead. I looked at her, amused. You make that up yourself? Her face froze, then she went all hurt. How can you say that? I spent so long finding it. Nolan snapped. Pulling her close, he glared at me. Bianca went out of her way for you. Don't appreciate it, fine, but don't accuse her. I didn't react. Nolan pulled up the recharge panel and picked my name. 20,000 done. The system kicked in, forcing my avatar toward the crocodile river. His voice went cold. 20 grand buys control of a real player. If you won't move, I'll make you. I'll prove you wrong about Bianca. My steps locked up as I moved forward. I could break the control, but that would expose me. I glanced at the countdown overhead. Nolan was broke. He'd just spent his last cash to buy himself 2 more days. In the final minute, the system would force him to recharge again. I fought for control. Just as I was about to step into the river, the countdown hit 0. The system's cold voice cut through. Funds have been reset. Yesterday's top spender, Nolan Clooney, must continue recharging. Failure to do so will result in forced entry into the game to await rescue. Insufficient balance detected. Activation in progress. Nolan went pale. A massive mechanical claw tore open the sky. He stumbled back, panicking. No. Don't take me. I'm not going back in. Terrified, he snapped at Bianca. Bianca, transfer it. Recharge now. She flinched, stepped back, then hurried to send money. $100 received. His face went red. He'd just sent her 30 grand that morning. Then, the notification came from my phone. He stared at the non-stop deposit alerts lighting up my banking app. The color drained from his face. Why is the money going into your account? The blue boundary light hummed with a low, vibrating frequency that made the fillings in my teeth ache. To everyone else, it was a terrifying wall of alien energy. To me, it was just a localized gravity barrier, a line of code I had written during a rainy winter 3 years ago when the company was still operating out of a damp basement. Nolan's hand was still raised toward Bianca when the mechanical claw tore through the sky. It didn't look like metal. It looked like a cluster of dark, pixelated polygons, shifting and grinding against themselves with a sound like tearing sheet metal. The crowd screamed, scattering backward like dry leaves in a gust of wind. No. Wait. Nolan stumbled, his polished leather shoes slipping on the damp concrete of the plaza. I'm the #1 spender. I have VIP immunity. The system's voice did not come from the sky. It came from everyone's personal interface, a flat, synthesized tone that possessed no heat, no anger, and no mercy. Warning. Player Nolan Clooney's active balance has fallen below the threshold for Tier 1 preservation. Minimum daily maintenance fee, $10,000. Current account balance, $0. Initiating retrieval protocol. Bianca, do it now. Nolan's voice cracked, a high, thin sound that didn't belong to a CEO who had spent the last decade commanding boardrooms. The account. The overseas trust. I gave you the authorization code this morning. Transfer the 30,000. Bianca's fingers flew across her phone screen. Her face was white, her carefully styled hair clinging to her cheeks with sweat. I'm trying. Nolan, I'm trying. The app is loading. It's $100 received from player associate Bianca Horan. The claw descended. It didn't grab Nolan by the collar. It wrapped around his ankles, its digital edges biting into his skin. He let out a sharp, choked gasp. As he was lifted off his feet, his body tilting backward. Bianca, he shrieked, his fingers clawing at the empty air. Why only $100? Where is the rest of the money? It's locked, she screamed back, though she didn't take a single step toward the boundary line. Instead, she took 2 steps back, her eyes darting toward the edge of the plaza where the luxury cars were parked. The bank flagged the transaction. They said the source account is under audit. That was a lie, of course. I knew because the real-time transaction ledger was scrolling across the lower right corner of my vision, invisible to everyone else, but projected directly onto my retinas. Bianca hadn't tried to send 30,000. She had typed in 30,000, deleted the zeros and sent 100. The remaining 29,900 had already been routed to an offshore personal account under her name, an account she thought was private. Serena. Nolan's head hung downward as the claw dragged him toward the boundary. His eyes, wide and bloodshot, locked onto my face. Specifically, they locked onto my phone, which was vibrating with a continuous sequence of soft, melodic chimes. Ping, ping, ping. The screen lit up again and again. Notice, Bank of Commerce. Your account ending in 8802 has received a wire transfer of $1 billion. Notice, your account ending in 8802 has received a wire transfer of $20,000. Notice, your account ending in 8802 has received a wire transfer of $100. Why? Nolan's voice was barely a whisper, drowned out by the rising wind of the game's rendering engine. Why is my money going to you? Serena. What did you do? You always told me to stay home and learn how to cook, Nolan, I said, my voice quiet enough that only he could hear it over the roar of the machinery. But you forgot one thing. 10 years ago, when we registered the company, you didn't want to pay the registration taxes under your own name because of your family's ongoing lawsuits. You used my name. You signed the global financial authorization. His eyes widened. The memory must have hit him like a physical blow. The small, dusty notary office, the grease-stained table, his impatient voice telling me to just sign the damn papers, Serena. I don't have time for this. Every payment gateway in this game runs through the original corporate architecture. I continued, stepping closer to the boundary line until the blue light turned my skin a pale, ghostly shade. And that architecture belongs to me. Every dollar you spend to buy Bianca's freedom, every dollar you spend to buy your own safety, it doesn't go to the game's creators in some distant galaxy. It goes directly to the wife you left behind. You, Nolan choked, his face turning purple as the claw hauled him over the threshold. You planned this. I didn't plan for the world to end, Nolan, I said. But when it did, I simply made sure my ledger was balanced. With a dull pop, Nolan crossed the barrier. The system dropped him onto the concrete on the other side. He fell hard, skinning his elbows, his expensive, tailored trousers tearing at the knees. For the first time in his life, he was on the dirty side of the glass. The plaza on the game's side was crowded with hundreds of players who had failed their previous trials. They looked like ghosts, hollow-eyed, dirty, some with makeshift bandages wrapped around their limbs. When Nolan fell among them, several people recognized him. Isn't that the billionaire? The one who spent $1 billion to save his mistress. Why is he back? Did his money run out? Nolan scrambled to his feet, trying to brush the dust off his suit, but his hands were shaking too badly. He looked through the transparent barrier at Bianca, who was standing on the real side, her hands pressed against the glass. Bianca, call Nathan. Nolan yelled, his voice muffled by the barrier. Tell him to liquidate the West Side Development Project. I need 10 million in the game. Account now. Bianca looked around nervously. The crowd on her side was watching her, their expressions cold and disgusted. Nolan, Uncle Nathan's phone is off. I tried calling him 3 times. The secretary said he's in an emergency board meeting. He wasn't in a board meeting. I knew exactly where Nathan Clooney was. He was currently signing the transfer papers for Nolan's personal real estate holdings, using a power of attorney that Bianca had helped him secure 3 days ago under the guise of estate planning for Nolan's safety. Level 1 trial. The beam crossing. Time remaining, 5 o'clock. The system announcement echoed through the plaza. In the center of the concrete floor, a massive circular pit opened, filled with dark, sluggish green water. The smell of rot and wet leather rose from the depths, so strong it made several players gag. Beneath the surface of the water, long armored shapes shifted. Yellow, slit pupil eyes broke the surface, staring up at the platform with hungry, ancient patience. The beam. Nolan muttered, looking at the narrow 3-inch wide concrete girder that stretched across the 50-foot pit. Nolan, Bianca called out from the safe side, her voice filled with artificial urgency. Remember what I told you. The crocodiles are just holograms. It's a courage test. If you fall, you just swim to the other side. We spent weeks verifying this. Nolan looked at the water, then at Bianca. He wanted to believe her. He needed to believe her. If the crocodiles were fake, then this level was easy. He could just walk across, or even swim if he lost his balance. Are you sure? He shouted. I'm positive. Bianca cried, clutching her hands to her chest. I wouldn't lie to you, Nolan. I did it for you. A young man in a torn college hoodie stepped forward. He had 3 fail marks, glowing red on his wrist interface. If he didn't cross now, he would be deleted. I'll go first, he whispered, his voice trembling. If it's just a hologram, I can do it. Wait, I said, stepping out from the crowd. The young man stopped, looking at me. Don't listen to her, I said, pointing at Bianca. She doesn't know how the physics engine of this level is rendered. The water is deep, and the friction coefficient of the beam is reduced by 60% due to the algae overlay. If you fall, the collision physics are active. You will die. Shut up, Serena. Nolan snarled, his old arrogance returning for a brief moment. What do you know about this game? You're just a housewife who spent her days spending my money. Bianca studied the data for weeks. She knows the system. She found her data on a public forum that was seeded with false information by the developers to weed out players who tried to use external cheats. I said. But go ahead. If you think she's right, you go first. Nolan hesitated. He looked at the narrow beam, then at the swirling water below. The college student, desperate and terrified, couldn't wait any longer. She's lying, the boy muttered, looking at Bianca's clean, expensive clothes and then At my simple jacket. She's just trying to scare us. The rich people always have. The real info. Before I could grab his arm, the boy leaped onto the beam. He made it 3 steps. His foot slipped on the wet concrete. He didn't even have time to scream. He fell sideways, hitting the water with a loud splash. For half a second, nothing happened. The boy broke the surface, gasping. It's just water. There's no. A massive set of jaws broke the surface from below. The sound of bones crushing was loud and wet, echoing off the concrete walls of the chamber. The water turned a sudden brilliant crimson. The boy's red wrist interface flickered twice, then shattered into a shower of blue, glowing pixels. He didn't just die. He was disassembled into raw code, his body dissolving into sparkling blue dust before he could even sink to the bottom. The plaza went dead silent. On the other side of the glass, Bianca took a sharp step back, her hands flying to her mouth. Nolan's face went the color of curdled milk. He looked at the water, then slowly turned his head to look at me, his eyes wide with a horror that went deeper than anything he had ever felt in his life. They're real, he whispered. You knew, Nolan said, his voice shaking so hard he could barely form the words. He pointed a trembling finger at me. You knew they were real, and you let him jump. I told him not to. I said, my voice flat. He chose to believe your childhood friend instead. Serena. Nolan took a step toward me, his hand reaching out. You know how to cross. You said something about the physics engine. You built this? No. That's impossible. You're just Serena. You're my wife. I was your wife, I corrected him. And you spent 10 years ignoring everything. I did. When I worked 18 hours a day in the study, you told your friends I was playing on my computer because I was too lazy to get a real job. When I tried to show you the beta test logs, you threw them in the trash and told me to focus on my recovery from heart surgery. I was trying to protect you. Nolan stammered, his eyes darting to the countdown timer. 2:45. The stress of the business, it wasn't good for your heart. No, Nolan. You wanted a trophy who wouldn't ask questions about where the company's funds were going, I said. And now, those funds are exactly where they belong. I walked toward the edge of the pit. The other players shrank back, watching me with a mixture of fear and hope. Serena. Bianca's voice came through the speaker system again, shrill and desperate. Don't you dare touch him. If anything happens to Nolan, I'll tell Uncle Nathan to sue you. You stole his money. I didn't even look at her. I stood at the foot of the concrete beam. The crocodiles below sensed my presence. 3 of them swam to the base of the beam, their tails thrashing, their jaws snapping with a dry wooden sound. I raised my right foot and tapped the edge of the beam twice, quickly. Tap. Tap. Then, I paused for 1 full second, and tapped once more hard. Tap. A low, mechanical click sounded from within the concrete structure. The blue boundary lights along the edge of the pit shifted to green. The crocodiles, which had been snapping at the air, suddenly turned and swam toward the far corners of the tank, their behavior parameters overridden by the developer tool. Key I had just input with my heel. I stepped onto the beam. It was narrow, but the surface friction had reset to normal. My sneakers gripped the concrete easily. I walked across with steady, measured steps, my hands in my pockets, without looking down once. The players on the starting platform gasped. She did it. How did she do that? The monsters didn't even touch her. When I reached the other side, I stepped onto the safe platform and turned back. Nolan was standing at the edge of the pit, his face twisted in a mixture of greed and terror. Serena, tell me the code. What did you tap? Tell me and I'll sign the divorce papers. I'll give you 50% of the company. The company is already mine, Nolan, I said. I bought out 60% of the shares this morning through the holding company that handles the game's registration fees. Your Uncle Nathan sold his shares to me for 50 cents on the dollar because he thought the currency was going to be worthless in the new world. Nolan's head snapped toward the glass. Bianca, is that true? Did Nathan sell the shares? Bianca's phone was ringing. She looked down at it, her face turning pale. She answered it, listened for 3 seconds, and then her hand dropped to her side, the phone slipping from her fingers and cracking on the concrete floor. Nolan, she whispered, her voice carrying through the barrier's microphone. The bank assets have been seized. The court issued an emergency injunction. They said our company was operating an illegal financial clearinghouse through the game's servers. What? Nolan screamed. That's impossible. We didn't do that. No, you didn't, I said from the safe platform. But your Uncle Nathan did. He used your personal accounts to launder $300 million in offshore gambling funds last year while you were busy buying Bianca her private amusement park. The countdown timer hit 30 seconds. The concrete platform beneath Nolan's feet began to vibrate. The green lights on. The beam began to flicker back to blue. Serena. Nolan fell to his knees, his hands gripping the edge of the pit. Please. We've been together for 10 years. I saved you once. I rescued you from that island. You can't leave me here to die. I looked at him, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt absolutely nothing. You didn't rescue me from the island, Nolan, I said. Nolan froze, his hands still clutching the concrete. What are you talking about? I was there. I was stranded and you came. I came because I found your coordinates on the marine transponder I installed. On your boat, I said. But do you know who turned off that transponder in the first place? Do you know who hired the crew that left you there to dehydrate? Nolan's eyes slowly turned toward Bianca, who was backing away from the glass barrier, her heels clicking rapidly against the pavement. She told you it was a navigation error, I said. She told you the storm wiped out the electronics. But Bianca was on Nathan's yacht that weekend. The yacht that was parked 3 miles south of your island, waiting to see if you would die before the search parties could be called off. Bianca. Nolan's voice was hollow. He looked through the glass at her. Is that true? Bianca didn't answer. She was already running toward the edge of the plaza, her silk scarf fluttering behind her like a broken wing. She didn't look back once. The man she had loved since childhood was currently trapped in a pit of monsters, and her only concern was reaching the luxury sedan before the police arrived to freeze her remaining personal accounts. When I found you, I continued, you were so dehydrated your kidneys were failing. The ship's captain didn't want to risk his license by giving you an unauthorized transfusion on a vessel without medical clearance. I didn't hesitate. I used a sterile catheter from the emergency kit and connected our veins directly. I held up my left wrist where the thin white scar of the incision still showed. I gave you 800 milliliters of blood over 12 hours, I said. My heart was already weak from the congenital defect I've had since childhood. That transfusion nearly killed me. But when you woke up, you didn't see me. You saw Bianca, who had rushed to the harbor after she realized you were going to survive, pretending she had been searching for you all along. I didn't know, Nolan whispered. He looked at his own hands, then at the blood-red water below. She told me she was the one who rented the rescue boat. She said you only showed up after the salvage crew arrived. And you believed her because she looked better in a sundress than I did in a hospital gown, I said. 10 seconds remaining. Level closing. The concrete beam began to retract into the wall. Serena. Nolan scrambled to his feet, his face wild with panic. The code. Just tell me the code. I'll do anything. I'll be your dog. I'll work for you. Just don't let them take me. There is no code that can save you now, Nolan, I said. The system doesn't accept cheat codes once the level transition has begun. You have to jump, or you have to climb. I can't swim, he screamed. You know I can't swim. Then I guess you should have spent that $1 billion on swimming lessons instead of Bianca's amusement park, I said. The platform beneath his feet tilted. With a wild, desperate cry, Nolan slid off the edge. He managed to catch the lip of the concrete with his fingers, his legs dangling over the dark water. Below him, 3 massive heads broke the surface, their jaws parting in anticipation. I turned my back on him and walked through the exit door into the administrator's corridor. Behind me, the sound of the system clearing the level was very clean, very precise. A single wet splash. A choked scream that lasted for less than 2 seconds. And then, the quiet hum of the server fans resetting the room for the next round. The administrator's suite was situated in the high-frequency space between the game world and reality. It looked like my old study, the one Nolan had called a trash heap. But the walls were made of liquid crystal glass that displayed the global financial markets in real time. My assistant, Jiang, was waiting for me with a tablet. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were bright. The takeover is complete, Serena, he said, handing me the screen. We acquired the remaining 40% of Clooney Group's domestic assets at 2 p.m. Nathan. Clooney tried to flee to Singapore, but the border control systems are integrated with our game's verification network now. He was flagged as an unregistered entity and detained at the terminal. And Bianca? I asked, sitting down in the leather chair. She spent the last of her cash trying to buy a high-tier transfer pass from a black market broker in the plaza. Jiang said, a small, cold smile appearing on his face. But the broker was one of our test accounts. The pass she bought was a dummy. It redirected her registration code back into the system's low-tier pool. Where is she now? Level 2. The glass maze, Jiang said. She's currently trying to find her way through the heat grid floor. She's failed twice already. One more fail, and she'll be converted into server optimization code. I looked at the screen. On the monitor, Bianca was crawling through a narrow corridor made of polished, transparent panels. Her designer clothes were torn, her hands bloody from trying to find the seams in the glass. Below her, the floor plates were glowing a dull, angry orange. Leave her there, I said. The game's rules are fair. If she has the intelligence to solve the maze, she can walk out. If not, then she can help keep our server latency down. What about Nolan? Jiang asked. I pulled up Nolan's player profile on the main screen. His avatar was grayed out, but the status didn't say deleted. It said pending restoration. In the game I designed, players who failed 3 times didn't actually die. At least, not permanently. Their consciousness was digitized and stored in the recycle bin of the core server, used as NPCs to populate the lower levels until their debts were paid off through labor. Nolan Clooney's current labor contract was estimated at 3,000 years of simulated bricklaying in the level 4 construction zone. Let him work, I said. He always said manual labor was good for character development. Let's see if he can build something of his own for once. 3 months later, the sky above the city returned to its normal blue. The game didn't disappear, but it became a regulated part of daily life. The spender leaderboard was abolished, replaced by a merit-based system where players could only earn passage back to reality by demonstrating cooperation, skill, and public service within the game's community sectors. The Clooney Group building was renamed the Serena Corporation. I stood on the top floor balcony, watching the traffic flow through the streets. Below, the blue boundary lines had been moved to the outskirts of the city, serving as national parks where people could go to test their skills in a controlled environment. A soft chime sounded from my phone. It wasn't a bank alert. It was a message from the system core. System update. Player Nolan Clooney has completed his first 10,000 hours of reconstruction labor. Current balance, minus $999,980,000.00. Remaining contract. Time, 2,999 years, 11 months, 12 days. I swiped the notification away. Serena, Jiang said, stepping out onto the balcony with a stack of new project proposals. The engineering team wants to know if we should launch the second phase of the reality reconstruction. We have enough clean data from the server cores to rebuild the damaged agricultural zones in the north. Go ahead, I said without looking back. And Jiang? Yes. Make sure the code is clean. No backdoors. No VIP privileges. Everyone starts with the same balance. Understood, he said, bowing slightly before turning back to the office. I looked out at the horizon, where the distant mountains met the sky. For 10 years, I had lived in the shadow of a man who thought his wealth could buy anything, even the life of the woman who had saved him. But in the end, the system always balances itself. And my ledger was finally clean.